Thank you for plugging into this Family Life News podcast, streaming issues-driven, family-focused news.
How can Christians engage with developing technologies from a biblical worldview? That is the topic of today's Faith Under Fire, where we tackle the issues facing Christian citizens in American culture. I'm Abigail Hoffland, and my guest today is James Spencer, author and president of the D.L. Moody Center in Massachusetts. James, thank you so much for being with us today. To jump right in, let's hear about your new book, Christian Resistance: Learning to Defy the World and Follow Christ. What are some of the topics you cover in it, and why did you decide to write it now?
I think I decided to write the book now because what I see is that we're living in a world that is becoming increasingly proficient at telling stories that deny God. The idea behind Christian resistance really is not, militance, let's say, but it's about holding our ground. It's about having a strong boundary. The way I usually describe it is it's like a dam holding back water. And so the dam has to hold its shape in order to do its job. And the water is touching that dam, but there's a clear distinction between what the water is and what the dam is. And that's sort of what Christian resistance is about. It's about becoming this sort of boundary where we're not detaching ourselves from the world, we're not isolating ourselves from the world, but we're recognizing that, look, this is where our Christian identity ends, and this is where the world begins.
What are some of your chief concerns with developing technologies such as artificial intelligence?
What I'm most concerned with, I think, in the technology space is we're continually being told that this will help our world progress, that it will help our world become more efficient, that we'll be able to do all of these other wonderful things. But increasingly what I'm seeing is people being less and less in the world and actually enjoying the reality and the beauty of creation that God has given us. And we're more and more enamored with just information. And so I think the big challenge for Christians is to think about artificial intelligence as something that is driving us toward a worldview that says, if we can only get the next piece of information, if we can only process all of these different pieces of information that much faster, maybe we can solve what's wrong with the world. And that's just not true. It doesn't matter how much information we have, how fast we can synthesize it, how much information we can bring together and pull together and fiddle around with. The world is always going to be broken. And so we've got to step into these new technologies with a very rooted understanding that the world is broken because of sin, that the solution to that sin is Jesus Christ, and that the church is a very real, concrete body within the world that is to live differently, strangely, as we proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ.
One of the ethical considerations I think we have to also point out with artificial intelligence is that it's always going to be intrinsically biased at some level. So we have a lot of faith leaders who are predicting that this could actually become a great weapon against not only our faith, but also truth itself. What is your response to this?
I think that anytime we move into a space where you're going to have a dominant vehicle for the spread of information, but also for the interpretation of that information, we run that risk. I think it's a totally plausible concern that when the thing that we look to for answers consistently gives us answers that are not from a Christian perspective, let's say, the less likely it is that people are going to coordinate around Christian answers. And I think that's the real challenge here is actually it's not information so much, I don't think, as coordination. I think as the world becomes sort of immersed in artificial intelligence, if that actually comes to pass, it'll be very similar to what we have on the internet, although more tailored and funneled toward us. With artificial intelligence, I think the way that this has the potential to go is that the artificial intelligence sits at the center as a guru, and we go to the guru then for our answers. And as the guru gives us those answers, it's going to be increasingly difficult to say, yeah, but the guru doesn't know everything, because it really feels like the guru knows everything. And it's just part of this process that we're going to have to go through to recognize that having more information doesn't necessarily make you wise. It just means you have more information. I think we're underselling intelligence when we talk about artificial intelligence, because part of intelligence is also really being able to discern when you're being given an answer that could have 16 other different answers.
That's James Spencer, author of the new book, Christian Resistance, Learning to Defy the World and Follow Christ. Tune in next week for part 2 of this conversation on Faith Under Fire. For Family Life News, I'm Abigail Hoffland.